So welcome to topic 6, numeration, number sense, mental computation, and place value. The resources that you could use to teach two-digit numbers. Okay, so we've got a few ideas there, and we're asked to look at the advantages and disadvantages of each. So we might start with the paddle pop sticks. What are the advantages of the paddle pop sticks?
I quite like the way that you could bundle 10 together to show young children particularly that 10 ones equals 10 rather than just a slim piece of wood from the blocks.
And that's right. And as some people are saying there, that you can bundle the ones to make a 10, and they can still see the individual ones in the bundle. So yes, that bundling gives the that tactile and visual understanding of what place value is all about. That place value is really all about, one of the aspects of place value is about bundling groups together to as you create the different houses. Any disadvantages with the paddle pop sticks? Yeah, it'd become a bit messy when you get large numbers, wouldn't it? Okay. All right, what about the MABs then? What advantages are there of the MABs? That's right. It shows things like hundreds really well, and they do come into their own with larger numbers, don't they? Like you'd probably be pushed to use bundling sticks more than 100, whereas the having the hundreds and the thousands with MABs does allow some concrete representation for those larger numbers. Any disadvantages with the MABs? The tens and the hundreds and so forth don't represent the individual blocks very well. They've got marks on them to show them, but students can get confused as to trying to understand that a 10 block is the same as 10 ones. And so there's a lot of work needs to be done there in getting students to show that the 10 individual ones is the same as 110. So you don't just pull out the 110 and say this is 10, because the students will sort of look at you and say, come on, that's just one piece of timber. So some work needs to be done there. I'll just share a story I heard with a year one teacher who was working with some numbers, around 10 and just over 10, and they were using MABs to represent them. And they were only using the MAB ones at this stage. They hadn't introduced the 10 yet. And some of the students, as they were dealing with groups of 10, they were saying, can't we stick these together? They're really awkward to keep together when we're moving them around. And so one of the students, the teacher said, well, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. It was near the end of the day. She got out the Clag glue and got them to stick 10 ones together. And the student said, oh, these aren't staying together real well. The glue needs to dry. And she said, okay, well, let's leave them on your desk overnight and they can dry. So the kids all left. She grabbed all the ones that had been glued together, washed the glue off, and replaced it with a tens piece. So when they came in the next morning, they all had an MAB 10 there. All right, another resource that was mentioned there were counters. What advantages would there be with counters? You can count them. What disadvantages might there be? It's not easy to bundle them. I have seen situations where people have blue tacked them together or something like that just to keep them in a bundle of 10, but they're not easily bundled, so it does become a bit awkward. They're really good for for representing 1 to 9, but they do become awkward when you start to group them. What about the place value map? What's the advantages of place value map? Yes, you can clearly see the houses. The houses are visible and able to be understood. And it provides that link between placing the materials in the houses to placing the numerals in the symbolic representation, in that you place the materials in the same relative positions. You start with the ones, and then to the left of those you have the tens, and the left of those you have the hundreds, and so forth. And that's the way in which the numbers eventually are written. And what a lot of teachers do with the place value maps, they have them laminated and so forth, and as they're transitioning to writing the symbols, they can have the MABs or whatever material you're using laid out on them, and then the students can write how many bundles of each of the house values they have, and they can write that on the place value map with a washable pen, and so they can progress to the writing of the symbols that way. Okay, so how would these resources change if you were teaching 3-digit numbers? That's right, you'd use MABs, you probably wouldn't use the others. And what would happen with the place value map? Yes, you'd have to have that extra house. And what about 6-digit numbers? 6-digit numbers, even using MABs becomes awkward, because the MABs typically only go to 1,000 or into the thousands, 4-digit numbers. So you need to use some sort of other materials or different objects to represent maybe groups of them, or maybe have pictures that you use rather than actual materials, because you find that the materials will just become awkward. And yes, you'd maybe use the numeral expander instead of the materials on the place value map. Okay, could you put a tick if you're happy with question 1, or question 2, or a cross if there's something you want to follow up there?